SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hi all, welcome to the third lecture on biomathematics. Today we will continue discussing graphs and functions. So the title of today's lecture is Graphs and Functions Part 2. In this lecture we will continue discussing some more graphs and some more functions. Last time we discussed different functions, linear function, etc., quadratic function, etc. And in this lecture, we will discuss some more functions and how to plot them as graphs. So last time, in the last lecture, we plotted different functions. And today we will see some more functions, how to plot them, and so on and so forth. We will also see how some natural phenomena that we see in either in biological situations, in some situations in biology or in some other context, and how this natural phenomena somewhat appear as if they behave as if they are like some mathematical functions. So, or in other words, this phenomena behave in a similar way as this mathematical functions behave. So we will see many examples today. So let us just remember ourselves that what is a function. Just remind ourselves that what is a function. So last time we said that function is a relation between two things that we plot in the x-axis and y-axis. We said that to plot any graph, you need an x-axis and a y-axis, the simplest graph. And we will take points from x-axis from a table given x and y, and then we'll put on the xy plane. And the relation between the quantities that we plot in the x-axis and the quantities that we plot in the y-axis is called a function. Now we saw many functions like linear function, y equal to mx plus c. We saw quadratic functions, y is equal to kx square. We saw energy in a spring or the surface area. They are all quadratic functions of, for example, surface area of an organism is a quadratic function of its radius. We also saw cubic functions, y is equal to some constant k times x cube. So these are the three functions in general: y is equal to mx plus c, y is equal to kx square, and y is equal to kx cube. And we saw how we plot them in the next slide. As we see, we saw this plot last time, that y is equal to x is a line seen in the red here, is a straight line. Y is equal to x square is the quadratic function which is shown here in green, and y is equal to x cube is this function, this curve seen in blue here. So these three functions, once we understand these three functions, we also said that a combination of these functions, x, x square, x cube, x power 4, x power 5, etc., will give some other function. For example, x plus x square will give some other function, x minus x square will give some other function. So any combination of this function will give rise to some other function, and this combination of this simple functions like x, x square, x cube, x power 4, etc. is used. This combination is very useful in describing many natural phenomena, as we will see today. Last time we said a very simple function, very well known function called exponential function, and we expressed it as a combination of x power 2, x power 3, etc., etc. So let us just remind ourselves like what we wrote last time. We wrote e power x equal to 1 plus x square by 2 plus x cube by 6 plus x power 4 by 24 plus x power 5 divided by 120 plus dot dot dot. This dot 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 means this series continues till infinity. So this is a infinite series, and the sum of this infinite series, or the series having infinite terms, will give you this value e power x. Just a comment on a notation. E power x is also written as exp bracket x. So when you write at some places when you see exp bracket x, it is same as e power x. It is same as this series. So once we know x square, x cube, x power 4, x power 5, etc., we can sum all of them in this particular fashion. You divide the x square by 2, divide x cube by 6, divide x power 4 by 24, and so on and so forth, and sum all of them, and with 1 you will get e power x. We also saw that e power x can be approximated as something. For example, like let us look at those slides again. So here again, e power x is shown in green here, and 1 plus x is shown as a red line here. When x value is very close to 0, these lines are the same. That means e power x value is same as 1 plus x value when x is very close to 0. Here when you say 1 plus x, this 1 plus x is only 2 terms in this series having infinite terms. So we have terms like 1 plus x square by 2 plus x cube by c. If we neglect all these terms and take only e power x equal to 1 plus x, this is true, this is okay when x is very close to 0. If we take more terms like x square by 2 and x cube by 6 also, that is, we assume that e power x is 1 plus x square by 2 plus x cube by 6, that will be okay again below 1, but much in a bigger range compared to this. So the more terms you take in this expansion, this curve is closer to e power x. So the red curve in this second graph is 1 plus x square by 2 plus x cube by 6, and the green curve is e power x. So the lesson here is that some functions like e power x can be written as an infinite series, a series of a power series like x power something plus x power some other thing plus x power some other thing plus. And once we have this, if we take a few of those terms, that will still represent this function, but in a limited range. To get this function at for any value of x, one has to take all this terms. Like I have to sum this infinite series. So this is all those things we learned last time. So now let us look at a couple of examples of e power x. So where have you heard exponential? You have heard exponential, for example, in the context of exponentially growing something. So you have heard microbial growth. Microbial growth, we learned that it's an exponent. At some phase it's growing exponentially. You might have heard of Arrhenius equation. The rate of a reaction is a e power something. So let us have a look at it. This examples. So when rapidly multiplying bacterial cells, for example, or yeast cells, we call it exponential phase or exponential growth. Sometimes it's also called a log phase. In the log phase, things grow exponentially. And why we call it log phase, we will come to that later. But in the log phase, the number of microbes is growing like an e power x. The Arrhenius equation, we have seen R is equal to A e power minus activation energy E A divided by R T, where T is temperature and R is universal gas constant. So, this is another example where exponential function is seen in biology. So, think about it, for example, this equation a bit. The rate of a reaction behave as if it is a mathematical function. So, this is a natural process. Natural process behave as if it is like a mathematical function. What does it mean? It means that we can describe this natural process of the rate of a reaction using an exponential function. Now, let us see in this one can have, so we saw many graphs so far, and we could have a question. You could have a question. How do we plot all these graphs? Like, it's a very complicated curve sometime, like e power x curve, like x square, x cube, etc. How do we plot? So, the conventional way of plotting is that use a calculator, create a table and mark it on a graph sheet. So, all of you would have seen a scientific calculator having exponential function, and many functions that we use is there in the in a scientific calculator. So, you could use a scientific calculator, create a table like what we did last time and mark it on a graph sheet, and that will give you a graph, but it is a lot of work. To get a smooth curve, one has to make many points and it is time consuming. Today, we can use a computer to plot it. You can use some software to plot it. For example, GNU Plot is a freely available software on the web. So, if you go to this site, one can download GNU Plot and you can use this to plot any function. You can also plot this in Microsoft Excel, for example. There could be many other softwares. Once you Google search, you could get many softwares using which you can plot all these functions. Later in this lecture series, not in this today's lecture, but in some other part of the series, maybe in the next lecture itself, we could have a short demonstration on how to use some of this software. For example, how to use Excel and plot these functions, or how to use GNU Plot and plot these functions. We will have a short demonstration in one of the lectures. So, as of now, just please understand that in principle, we can use a calculator and plot all these functions, and or use a software and plot these functions, and there is we will learn how to do this. Okay. So, we understand x, x square, x cube, etc. and exponential function as a combination of this. Now, today let us go ahead and see a few more functions and see how you can express those functions as a combination of x, x square, x cube, x power 4, etc., etc. And one of the familiar function is called sine function. So, let us have a look at it. The sine function, sine of x, can be written as x minus x cube by 6 plus x power 5 by 120 minus x power 7 by 5040 plus so on and so forth. So, this is again another infinite series. There are infinite terms, and this, if you sum all these terms, you will get sine x. So, take any x value, calculate all this and sum of all this, you will get sine of x. So, and the sine of x is a periodic function, or it is an oscillating function. So, have a look at this graph here. So, you can see that when x is 0, sine 0 is 0, and as the x increases, till some extent the function increases. After that it reaches a maximum value and this start to decrease, and at some point it reaches a minimum value, then starts to increase. This function again increases, then again reaches a peak, then decreases, again increases, decreases, increases, decreases. So sine of x is a function, is a mathematical function which behaves, which appear as if it's oscillating. You might have seen many natural phenomena. Think about a natural phenomena that you have seen that is oscillating or that is behaving in a periodic fashion, increasing and decreasing. So it just keeps increasing and decreasing. So there are many phenomena. We will see some of them today. But if you want to represent them mathematically, if you want to represent those phenomena, or if you want to talk about those phenomena in a mathematical language, one can use sin x as a function. Just like sin x, there is another function called cosine of x, or written as cos of x. So let us look at the next slide, which is cos of x, which can be written as 1 minus x square by 2 plus x power 4 by 24 minus x power 6 by 720, and so on and so forth. So again, cos of x can be written as a combination of the known functions like x square, x power 4, x power 6, etc. And if you sum all of them, you will get cos of x. Again, but when x equals 0, this will be 0, this term will be 0, this term will be 0, all terms will be 0 except 1. So when x equals 0, cosine of x or cos of x is 1. So you can see when x equals 0, this is 1. Then it decreases until minus 1, and then increases, then again decreases, increases. It's also a periodic function, or it's an oscillating function. And both cos of x and sin of x they oscillate between plus 1 and minus 1. So you can see that these are oscillating functions, periodic functions. As we said, you can think of many periodic phenomena, oscillating phenomena in day-to-day life or in biology, and one could write any such phenomena as a combination of sin x and cos x. So let us think of a couple of phenomena that we know and they are oscillating. We said in the first lecture that if you take seasons like the winter, summer, rainy season, they all repeat, they all periodically repeat. So for example, the temperature, let us have a look at this slide, and as we said, temperature over seasons, they periodically repeat, they increase and decrease. So temperature in the summer is maximum, and so let's have a look at it. So if you plot temperature and then season time, you will see that temperature in summer is maximum, and as the rainy season, some temperature decreases, and as the winter comes, temperature reaches to a minimum value in January, then it again increases. In March it has some intermediate value, again summer comes, it's a maximum, and then decreases, increases, decreases, increases, decreases. So temperature over seasons in time, you have this periodic function. As you see, this is the peak month. It's mostly like May, June. So this is like May. In most part of the India, in May the summer is in its peak, and it's the minimum temperature is sometime in sometime in January. The temperature has its minimum value. So temperature is a periodic function over seasons, and if you want to represent this phenomenon of temperature, the natural phenomena, you can say that this can be represented using sin x and cos x. A combination of sin x and cos x will represent this phenomenon of temperature rise and dip, increase and decrease in temperature can be represented using sin x and cos x. Let us think of another function, another natural phenomena is biological clock. Like as we get, like for example, we get hungry when it is noon, we want to eat. When it is night, again we want to eat. The morning, again you want to eat. So depending on the biological clock, as the time goes, the biological clock has a cyclic behavior, has a behavior which periodic behavior or an oscillating behavior. So for example, insulin secretion is some protein expression, a gene expression related to biological clock, and this is a periodic function, it's like a oscillating function. So again, if you want to represent this insulin secretion, one can use this mathematical functions of sin x and cos x. So the cyclin activity, the activity of the cyclin is also a periodic function or an oscillating function. In other words, any protein, for example, the expression of many proteins, if you take over cell cycle, it could be again a periodic oscillating function. For example, if you have seen histone, look at histone expression or any protein you take. In some phase, for example, histone in S phase, just at the beginning of the S phase, a lot of histone is expressed because in the X phase DNA replication happens and then chromatin assembly has to happen. So if you take histone as an example, at some part of the cell cycle histone is expressed a lot, and in some other part of the cell cycle histone expression is very little. So histone expression again has a periodic behavior. So there are many examples in biology where you have phenomena which happens like increasing and decreasing expression of genes, or increasing and decreasing activity, or a periodic activity or an oscillating activity. So we will, strictly speaking, there is some difference between periodic activity with compared to any other repeating activity. So any other oscillating activity. So we will come to all the strict definition of all this, what is periodic and all that later. But as of now, in this lecture, it is enough to understand that sin x and cos x represent periodic functions, and any periodic activity, any activity that repeats can be represented mathematically using this function sin x and cos x. Now we understand sin x and cos x, let us move to some other functions. Some other another example which we see biologically very often. In biology we see this thing called free energy. In thermodynamics we see free energy. And any reaction, if you want to explain, we use this diagram, free energy diagram, as we see here. Let us, so this has two minima, and when we say A going to B, so let's, in any reaction if you want to explain, let's say A going to B, we use this kind of a diagram. So this is state A and this is state B. So this protein having two shapes, or a chemical A converting to B and back. So all this can be represented, and you see a free energy diagram immediately associated with this, which has this particular shape. How do we get this? This we can get by plotting a function which is some constant p times x power 4 minus some other constant q times x power 2 minus some other constant m times x plus some other constant c. If we plot this function, we will get this. P, Q, M and C are some numbers here. So take these different numbers for P, Q, M and C and try plotting this. And you should be getting this kind of a curve for some values of P, Q, M and C. What we should learn from this is that another curve in called free energy that we see in thermodynamics and in biology can be obtained as a combination of x power 4, x square, x, etc. So again, a combination of sum of or combination of these functions can give you another curve that you are familiar with. Now we saw many curves. Let us also ask this curve. So most of the curves we saw, e power x, for example, is an increasing function. Like as x increases, e power x increases. Now there could be some examples where things decrease. So we saw that e power x is 1 plus x square by 2 plus so on and so forth. So now let us get familiar with another function called e power minus x. So let us have a look at it. This function e power minus x, which is essentially exponential function itself, but instead of this x, wherever there is this x, put minus x there. So if you, wherever there is x in this e power x, if you put minus x there, you will get e power minus x. So let us see here. So what is shown here is in red here is wherever there was x, I put minus x there. The 1 plus minus x plus minus x whole square plus minus x whole cube and so on and so forth. So if you do this, now 1 plus minus x is 1 minus x, minus x square is plus itself, so plus x square by 2, minus x cube is minus times x cube, so this is minus x cube by 6. So if you do this, you will get this. So exponential of minus x is nothing but 1 minus x plus x square by 2 minus x cube by 6 and so on and so forth. So e power minus x is a mathematical function which is again a combination of x square, x cube, etc., etc., etc. How does this, if we plot this as a graph, how does it look? Let us have a look at it. It looks like a decreasing function. So e power minus x. So we saw Arrhenius equation as a e power minus x. So this is decreasing function. So we saw some point of time that r is a e power minus x minus E a by r t. So the rate of a reaction is decreases with this factor. This whatever in the bracket increase, whenever this thing in the bracket increases, the rate of reaction decreases. The higher the activation energy, the lower the rate of the reaction is. So this is an exponentially decreasing function, e power minus of something. So similarly, so this is same thing. So you can see here this curve e power minus x decreases as the x increases. So this is another example. Now you could ask another question. So we saw many combination. So but one simple combination we can think of, which is 1 plus x square plus x cube plus x power 4, etc., etc. Why does it give? This is the simplest function. Like when we said e power x, we had some coefficients here divided by something, but without any of this, if we just write this, does this give anything? It turns out that it does. And so let us have a look at this. So this, if you add this 1 plus x square plus x cube and so on and so forth, you get a function called 1 by 1 minus x. And in the appearance, it is very similar to e power x. You can compare these two. Here it is 1 plus x square plus something. Here it is 1 plus x square with some coefficients, x cube with some other number, x cube with some coefficients. So without this, these two functions look similar, and their behavior is also similar. Both of them are increasing with x very fast. So again, this is a function which increases with x. Similarly, you could also think of some function which is 1 minus x plus x square. So let us have a look at the next slide. 1 minus x plus x square minus x cube and so on and so forth. So this function is called 1 by 1 plus x. This looks very much like an e power minus x. We said e power minus x is 1 minus x plus x square minus x square by 2 minus x cube by 6 and so on and so forth. So these two, if you compare, the only difference is that there are some coefficients in this e power minus x. Otherwise, they look similar. And their behavior is also similar. Both of them decrease. Start from 1 and then decrease as we go along x. So we saw that, so these are another set of functions which look very similar. Now why am I coming to this? So we saw we have this function 1 by 1 minus x is something. Now if we multiply this with x, that is if we write x times 1 minus x, what do we get? Or in other words, let us think about x by 1 plus x. So let us look at the next slide, which is, so let's look a slide here, which is x by 1 plus x. So if we look at this function x by 1 plus x, so let's have a look at this. 1 by 1 plus x can be written as 1 minus x plus x square minus x cube and so on and so forth. And if we multiply both sides with x, you will get x by 1 plus x. I do multiply numerator with x, so you get x by 1 plus x. So that means I multiply all these terms with x. So 1 times x is x, minus x times x is minus x square times x is x cube times x is x power 4. So then you get this function x minus x square plus and so on and so forth. And when you plot this, this looks like this. Now why is this important? This looks very much like some functions you have seen in biology. That's why I came to this, is that this function x by 1 plus x looks very much like some function which you saw in biology. And let us have a look at the next slide. So let us go back and remember that some functions that we saw in biology. You might have seen growth curve, some part of a growth curve, or also think about enzyme kinetics. So how do they look like? How do those curves look like? So let us look back to this slide. X by 1 plus x is increasing and going to appears like it's saturating, is slowing down. Now the growth curve does something like this. It is going to saturate. It's a part of a growth curve. Also in enzyme kinetics, you might have seen Michaelis-Menten reaction and so on and so forth, such reactions, and then the equations for them look like x by 1 plus x, and the curve will look like this. So what I wanted to convey you here is that x by 1 plus x again can be written as a combination of x, x square, x cube, x power 4, etc. And this function appears, or it mimics many biological phenomena like growth curve or enzyme kinetics. So we, by starting from x, x square, x cube, we came to a function which is which mimics a biological phenomena, or this biological phenomena of this particular enzyme kinetics reaction, for example, behaves as if it's a mathematical function. think about it, it's a very intriguing thing that a natural phenomena behaves like some function that we learned in mathematics. It's intriguing. So let us learn now more of this. This is one reason why we need to learn all this function, or the advantage of learning all this function is that by learning about this function, we can learn about this mathematical, this biological phenomena or this natural phenomena. Once we understand that this biological phenomena or natural phenomena behaves, or the phenomena behave as if like this mathematical function, we can understand. The more we understand the function, the more we understand the phenomena. So we'll go ahead and learn a few more functions. Another function we know we use is root x. Root x is also x per half. The root x looks like this, which goes very slowly. So let us compare root x, square root of x with x. So the green curve is y equal to x, and the red curve is y is equal to root x. And if you compare them, you see that root x goes slow compared to y equal to x. So this is another function that you use very often. So you also saw some function that decrease with x, like e power minus x and so on. There are more functions that decrease with x. So think of height of, if you drop this object from a height, the height of this falling object decreases with time. This is a function which decreases with time. You could also think about growth. When you have this growth of, let's say, any microbes, bacteria, yeast and so on, the nutrient concentration is decreasing with time. Another function which is decreasing. You might have seen delta G equal to delta H minus T delta S, this equation in thermodynamics. The free energy is related to enthalpy and temperature and entropy, etc. So when the more the temperature, the less the delta G decreases with temperature. So if you have such cases, we have decreasing function, the function that decreases with this parameter. So let us learn a few functions like this. Let us get familiar with a few functions. Let us have a look at it. So we learn y equal to x, which is the red line here. But if we take y equal to minus x, this is a decreasing function. This, as the x increases, y equal to minus x decreases. Similarly, y equal to minus 2x. So let us look this. Y equal to minus x is red curve. Y equal to minus 2x is another, the green curve, which is decreasing faster than minus x. Let us look another example. Y is equal to 4 minus 2x. This example look like delta H minus T delta S. So we have some value for delta H, which is 4, and minus 2x is like minus T delta S. So if you plot this again, it's a function which decreases. So such functions are useful in different contexts, and we will learn about this. We will learn about more about these functions later. Another function is y equal to x square and minus x square. If we compare, minus x square decreases with x. So you have many such functions which decrease in time. So now let us look some more functions which is very often seen in biological systems. So let us have a look at function called 2 power. So what we have seen so far is we saw e power x. When we saw that, we told that e is some number 2.7 something. So e is a number, and this number power x is a function that we saw. Now let us have a look at another function. If you can have a number power x, you could imagine something like 2 power x. 2 is a number and 2 power x. So, this is a function. So, y of x is equal to 2 power x. So, let us have a look at it, this function. So, this slide shows y equal to 2 power x, just like e power x increases. Now, why did I say this 2 power x function? Because very well known phenomenon of bacterial growth in biology behaves in so the number of bacteria in this bacterial growth is like 2 power x function. So, let us have a look at how exactly this bacterial growth is similar to 2 power x. So, let us have a look at this slide. So, what happens in a bacterial growth? So, for example, let us discuss the example of E. coli here. So, let us say you start with one cell of bacteria. So, you have number of bacteria 1 here. In about 20 minutes, they divide into 2 cells. So, we have, this is the first generation, this is 2 power 1. So, you have 2 cells. In again another 20 minutes, each of this cell divide into 2. So, this becomes this 2 and this becomes this 2. So, you have 4 cells. So, 2 power 2 in the second generation is 2 power 2, 4 cells. Again another 20 minutes, each of this cell divides and you get 8 cells. This gives 2, this gives 2, this gives 2, this gives 2. So, you have total 8 cells here, 2, 4, 6, 8. So, in the third generation you have 8 cells here. Now, this 8 is 2 power 3. So, in each 20 minutes it's just dividing, each of them is dividing by a factor of 2. So, 2 power something gives you the number of cells in after a time. So, in 60 minutes you have 8 cells. So, let us write it down here. Let us write slowly and understand. So, in 20 minutes you have 2 cells. So, at time equal to 0 you have just 1 0 minute, you have just 1 cell. In 20 minutes you have 2 cells. In 40 minutes you have 4 cells. In 60 minutes you have 8 cells. So, how do we describe this in mathematically? The way to describe this mathematically is seen in the next slide. So, you can describe this, the number of cells. So, let us have a look at this equation. The number of cells n as a function of time, n of t, goes like 2 power k t. So, what is 2 power k? K is the rate of cell division. For E. coli, typically k is 1 per 20 minutes. Every 20 minutes, 1 cell division happens. So, that is called rate of cell division. So, if k is 1 over 20 minutes, after when t equal to 60 minutes, 2 power k t is 2 power 3 equal to 8. So, let us understand this a bit more. So, we said k is 1 over 20 minutes. So, 2 power k t is equal to 2 power k is 1 over 20 and t is 60 minutes. So, this is 60 minutes. So, 60 minutes by 20 minutes you get 2 power 3. So, this is the way you got this 2 power 3 here. So, when t equal to 60 minutes you have 2 power 3 8 cells. So, you can extend this and you can ask this question after many hours, let us say after 10 hours. So, 10 hours later, so 10 hours is 60 into 10 is 600 minutes. So, the number after 10 hours will be 2 power 600 minutes divided by 20 minutes. So, it's 2 power some factor, and this will give you this is 30. So, this is 2 power 30. So, there will be this many bacteria after this is 2 power 30 bacteria after 10 hours. So, this is how this mathematical function is useful in understanding biological phenomena, for example, bacterial E. coli growth, as we saw here. We will come and discuss this in great detail later, but again here, as a first part of this lecture where we discuss functions, I just want to tell you that the function 2 power x is useful in biology, and we should understand this later. Another example of 2 power x, as you can see here, is DNA in PCR cycle. So, you all know what PCR is. PCR is polymerase chain reaction, and you can see that DNA molecule is again divided by each. When you replicate, you have DNA molecule increases. So, you have 2 DNA molecules. So, basically you can again get 2 power kT like this. So, another example is this exponentially increasing DNA molecules. Now, let us have a look at another function. So, let us look at how this 2 power x is if you compare this 2 power x to e power x, how does it look like? So, e power x and 2 power x look like this. So, this red curve here is 2 power x and the green curve is e power x. So, this is another example where you have biological function. 2 power x is a function which is relevant in biology, and we will learn about this in great detail. So, and you can see, now you can think of some other function 10 power x, y equal to 10 power x. It could have any number, 3 power x, 4 power x, 5 power x. So, how do they all look like an increasing function? And you see here 10 power x is this red curve, and you compare with e power x, it grows much faster. So, to summarize, let us summarize today's lecture. So, what we learned today is a few things. We learned many more functions. We learned periodic functions like sin x and cos x, and we said that periodic events can be represented using sin x and cos x, and functions that we see in biology can be written as a combination of simple functions. We saw x by 1 plus x written as some combination of x, x square, x cube, x power 4, etc. We saw exponential function. We saw few other functions like free energy written as a combination of x power 4, x square, etc. We also said many natural phenomena like bacterial growth behave like mathematical functions, or for example, rate of a reaction behave like a mathematical function. So, this is the summary of what we learned today, and in the next class we will extend this for a few more biological examples and go ahead with new ideas from mathematics that will be useful for understanding biological as well as other natural phenomena. Let us stop it here today.